2014 and beyond. And many of us say that we do that, and in many ways we do. But I want to take a look a little bit differently over the next couple, 3-4 weeks, as to how we can sail our vessel. How we can live our life for God more deliberately, more openly, more passionately as we move forward. I apologize, there are too many things out here and it's distracting me, so I will try to stay focused here. So, living our vessel, sailing our vessel is where we're going to look at, where we're going to talk about, but we're going to start today by viewing ourselves as God's vessel. Viewing ourselves as God's vessel. The other day, I was putting together one of the Christmas presents, and I needed tools. And I've got a wide collection of tools, and you know I'm not the handiest person, but I went and a couple of years ago, I bought myself a really nice ratchet set. And so I went down to get my ratchet set, and I brought it upstairs, and I'm ready to go. I opened it up, and there, laying before me, are all of my sockets. All right, let's go. And I reached to grab the socket itself, the wrench itself, and it's not there. I have all of these beautiful sockets, but I don't have a wrench. And I'm sitting there going, I want this to my sock. And now I don't have the tools that I need. Well, to my luck, my son got a better ratchet set for Christmas than I got. So guess who got to use it first? But the point is that when we borrow things, ever since we've been little, we've been raised to say, take care of what you borrow. Return it in a better shape. Or as good as, at least, as when you borrowed it. And that leads me to the first part of how I got to this week's sermon. Monday night, I went to put on my Civil Air Patrol uniform, and I got dressed, and I'm thinking, oh, Christmas was just a little too good. Got the pants on, but then I got on the scale. We'll talk in a few minutes about what the scale said, besides get off. But in the Air Force Auxiliary, the Civil Air Patrol, you're only allowed to wear the Air Force uniform up to a certain weight. I was 2 pounds shy of that weight. And then I started thinking about the sockets. And if I am to be God's tool here on earth, and He has given me this vessel, maybe I need to take a little better care of it. Because it's not mine. This vessel does not belong to me. It's like being a American Cup captain. And we've got this vessel that we're in charge of. And it's our responsibility to take care of it. And I know many of us are in the same boat. Sorry for the play on words. But many of us are in the same case where we know that we've not taken care of ourselves. In America alone, almost 70% of us are overweight. We weigh more than we should. And out of that, 30% of us are obese. We have a body mass index greater than too heavy. And many of us have a body mass index over 40, where we are extremely overweight. We are considered morbidly obese. And so as we enter into 2014 and we look at how we can live our life for God, we need to start by taking a look at ourselves and making sure that, as with any trip, our vessel, our vehicle, our mode of transportation, which is ourselves, is ready for the journey. How do we do that? Well, God talks about that. And we talked about it a couple years ago, but we're going to come back to it as we take a look at the book of Daniel. Thank you. You're on. So Daniel 1 starts off, and I invite you to follow along. In the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim. I practiced that word so many times this week and I still trip over it. In the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the articles of the temple of God. These he carried off to the temple of his God in Babylonia and put in the treasure house of his God. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, chief of his court officials, to bring in some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility, young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude of every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. He was to teach them the language and literature of the Babylonians. The king assured them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. They were to be trained for 3 years, and after that they were to enter the king's service. We'll stop there for a moment. So just real quick, here we see Judah has been besieged. Nebuchadnezzar has taken over. And he has brought in the best of the young men that had been captured to serve him. As a foodie myself, I love good food, which is part of the reason why I am where I am. To hear in verse 5, the king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. Sounds like a pretty good deal. To go to the finest restaurants and have the best food, not a bad thing to have to endure while being captive. But then we continue. Verse 6 says, among these, some were some from Judah: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The chief official gave them new names. To Daniel, the name of Belshazzar. To Hananiah, Shadrach. To Mishael, Meshach. And to Azariah, Abednego. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, and he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself in this way. Now God had caused the official to show some favor and sympathy to Daniel. But the official told Daniel, I'm afraid of my lord the king, who has assigned your food and drink. Why should he see you looking worse than the other young men your age? The king would then have my head because of you. Daniel then said to the guard, whom the chief official had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare your appearance with that of the young men who eat royal food, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see. So he agreed to this and tested them for 10 days. At the end of the 10 days, they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. So the guard took away their choice food and the wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables instead. Imagine being one of those at the table eating the king's food, and here comes mom and says, you need to eat your vegetables. To these 4 young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning, and Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. May God bless to our understanding the reading of His holy and divine word. So you may be asking, so what? We know the importance of taking care of ourselves. I've tried dieting. It just doesn't work. I don't like it. Yuck. We've got to go to all these special foods or these special diets and all these things that we've tried over the years because it's important for us to feel good. In fact, 38% of us every year start with a New Year resolution to lose weight, to be healthier, to eat better. In 2013, it was the #1 resolution. In 2012, it was the #1 resolution. 2011, it was the #1 resolution. We promised every year that we're going to take care of ourselves better. But the reality is, less than 3% of us actually accomplish the task of losing weight and taking care of ourselves better this year. Why is that? We've got all the science behind it. We know that if we eat these foods over these foods, that will help. We know that if we get out and we walk, we swim, we lift weights, that will help. We know that if we get in the habit of doing this day in and day out, that will help. But I think we're missing a couple of points. A couple of things that didn't really think about until I was reading lately. And Daniel highlights some of this. And I will say that these 5 points, to help us take care of our vessel, to be good stewards of the body that we have, come originally from the book of Daniel, but Rick Warren talks about it in his new book, The Daniel Plan. And he talks about these 5 things. There is the ones that we know: food, fitness, and focus. We know those. He throws in a couple more that we don't necessarily think about. He starts with faith. The problem with most of us when it comes to losing weight is we're guilt-ridden. We know we're overweight. We know we have to lose it. People harass us and poke fun at us. I can't tell you how many times I've been poked in the belly by my boys. More times than I care to count, and that was just yesterday. But we forget that we are God's vessel. We are not belonging to ourselves, but we belong to God. And if we're God's vessel, then we have to trust that the owner of this vessel is going to help us take care of it. Going back to the analogy of the America's Cup ship, the captain doesn't put out all of his money, but rather he goes to the owner and says, this needs to be done. I need your help. And so if we're serious about getting in shape, losing weight, becoming healthy, taking care of this vessel, the first thing we need to do is we need to turn to God. Thank Him for the opportunity to serve through our lives. Be honest with Him and admit that we've not been a good steward, that we're due for an oil change. There's some leaks that need to be patched up. The tires need to be changed. Whatever vessel we're in, there's always maintenance to be done. And we need help to do it. We need help from God. This is God's vessel. And so the first thing we have to do is turn to God. Then we can start to look at the food. When we sit down to eat, do we give thanks to God? Most of us do. Maybe not every meal, but regularly we give thanks to God and say, thank you for this food. But do we ask Him if this is what we're supposed to be eating? Is this the fuel that we need to run our race, to do our job, to finish our journey? And Rick Warren goes into all the foods we should eat, and we know that. Most of us, whole foods versus the processed foods, always better. We know all of that. But then the third point that we have to look at is fitness. If we let our car sit in a garage, especially after this past week, the beginning of last week when it was so frigid cold, what happens? The engine doesn't want to start. I don't know about you, but many mornings my engine does not want to start. But if we look at operating our vehicle in a way that keeps it healthy, we get out and we drive the car. We know that when it's cold, we turn it over if it's sitting there for a while, just to make sure the engine runs. We get out, we move, we do what we need to do. And if we find things in ourselves that we like to do, it makes it enjoyable. So fitness is the third point. Focus, developing habits. Again, we know the importance of finding the time, finding the building the habits, keeping the focus, looking at what our goal is. But what is our goal? What is our focus? Right there's our focus. It's not about looking good in the mirror. It's about being the best that you can to serve God. That's our focus. And then the final point that Rick Warren brings out is the need for friends. The reality is we cannot do it alone. We've talked several times about small groups. The importance of developing small group connections, relationships, people that you can trust. Without friends, we just wander. Without friends, we lose our focus. Without friends, we have nobody to keep us accountable. So the fifth point, which is the second point that we don't necessarily think about, is the need for friends, people to check in weekly, people to go to the gym with us or to walk around the block, people to encourage us to keep moving and keep healthy, people remind us, do you really need that extra piece of pie? Yes. between need and want. We'll talk about that one at another time. But it is friends who serve as that fifth point to help us move forward. So what are you going to do about it? Well, you may be saying nothing, I don't care anymore. You may be saying, you know what, I hadn't really thought about my body is actually God's vessel, and maybe I do need to take a little better care of it. Whether I'm 18 years old or I'm 90. Because our goal is that when our journey is done, is that we return to God in a better shape than we were. Now the nice thing is, this vessel does not go with us in the long run, in the end. And that, for some of us, is probably good news. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't take care of it now. Because we have been charged with a journey. We've been charged with a journey to serve God. And so I challenge you to find some friends to focus on your health for the next 3, 6, 12 months. Find some people, develop a small group, and check in regularly, whether it be over a salad at lunch, via phone calls or emails. Pray about it. Be attentive to what you eat. Get out and move. Turn the TV off. Use your vessel as God has designed it. Hopefully, when you came in and received your bulletin, you received a blue piece of paper. And I'm sure for the last 45 minutes you were wondering, what am I supposed to do with this? I don't know if the choir got it, because it came out later. We'll get the choir to get it. Good. This is voluntary. But what I want to ask you to do is, when we sing our hymn here in a moment, Jesus is all the world to me, I'm going to ask you to stay seated until the last verse. On this piece of paper, I'm going to ask you to write 3 things. I'm going to ask you to write your name. I'm going to ask you to write your height. And yes, I'm going to ask you to write your weight. No, I do want your name. It will only come to me. Now, to show you how open I'm going to be, my name is Christopher Heitkamp. I am 6'2". And when I got on the scale on Monday and they told me to get off, I weighed 238 pounds. Which is why the scale was yelling at me. I am 45 pounds above the top level of my normal weight. Why do I wear a jacket? It hides. I suffer from Dunlop's disease. If you don't know what Dunlop's disease, we talk about it in the military. It's when the waistline is Dunlop over the belts. I invite you to write down, holding quarters, your name, your height, and your weight. And you got an idea of what you weigh. You're just not 100%. I will be the only one to look at these. And then every week, I'm going to ask in the back, if you want, to jot down how much weight you've lost, or let's be honest, gained, in the last week. And let's see how much weight that we as a church can lose in 6 months. We need to lose weight. As a culture, we need to lose weight. We need to lose weight for our health. We need to lose weight for our kids. We need to lose weight for our God. We need to be healthy so that we can serve as we've been called. We need to view ourselves as God's vessel. To God be the glory. Now, forever. Amen. Let's pray.